Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. AJ, thank you for the first chat entry. Good evening to you. One more video in SimRail before we go back to Train Sim World 4 next week. Following up on an idea that Superpole gave me about couplers. This is the idea for next week. This week, though, we are following up actually on two things. We are following up on last week's video about the Polish safety systems. So we're talking about ETCS cap signaling that is used in the full supervision mode of operation on level 1 and on level 2 as well. So that it is also a follow-up on the video that we did on the Luzern-Sursee S-Bahn Zentralschweiz implementation of Rivet games in Train Sim World 3 at the time, and they had an level 1 implementation with full supervision, and here in SimRail we have some more advanced features for the cap signaling interface, the DMI, the driver machine interface, that we have not seen so far and we were not able to discuss. So this is what I thought we should do today, and also it will be a premiere insofar as that we are trying to do some driving HUD-less. Super Paul, hello, see you Spectre. Hey, good evening. Hope the dog is feeling better. Yes, she is coping, I think. She's still a bit on on a strange side, but I think she does not like the heat more than I do. But thank you very much for asking. So, Paul, I hope you heard that in the beginning. Next week, I am trying to start a video about couplers, what they are good for and what kind of couplers there are. But for now, we are in SimRail and doing ETCS cap signaling. And for that, I wanted to drive our ED250 train, the Pendolino, back from Warsaw to Katowice, not the whole trip, obviously, because it takes 3 hours 15. It is rated for at least, but the first part where we get through level 1 and level 2 ETCS cap signaling. This service is a bit hard to drive because in the beginning you're stopping at the stations in Warsaw and have quite some time to kill before you can proceed. Ravens Lofty, hey, nice to have you on the stream. There was something that I wanted, I think something reminded me of something that you said when I prepared today's presentation. We will come back to that, I think. Brake curves, I think. Yeah, brake curves in ETCS, that was the thing. So first, let's get dropped on the track somewhere past.
Today you will drive passenger train from Warszawa Wschodnia to Katowice. Begin with checking the radio connection with a dispatcher.
Warszawa Wschodnia. What is Warsaw East, if I'm not mistaken? Wschodnia, as opposed to Zachodnia, is east. Easy to remember because unlike Wschodnia, it does not contain a W for west, so it must be east. Lights, can have them on auto, no problem. I prefer to put it on what I want to do. And now let's really start with getting rid of the HUD. Let's see how fast we can, or how far we can go. And punch in our ETCS data, driver ID, starting at level SHP, train data, ED250, yes, it is an ED250 train running number. If I am not totally mistaken, it was 1401. For that, we can always check on the HUD. Yes, it's 1401. And we got to start. Acknowledge that we are in National Safety System mode. That sound was awful, yeah. The test sound from the HP is a bit annoying, I give you that. Let's release the brakes. We still have the spring brake on, so we won't have the train running away for now. Back pantograph circuitry. We will also see here, as soon as the pantograph touches the catenary, then we can close the main circuit breaker. Also here we have an indicator. It lights up if the main circuit breaker is open. And now we are actually so far that we can call the dispatch.
Warszawa Wschodnia to 1401. Radio check.
This is Warszawa Wschodnia. I read you loud and clear.
Warszawa Wschodnia 1401 is ready.
Thank you. Wait for signal.
Yeah, we can wait for the signal quite long because we can't see a signal here that is valid for us, so we will have to creep up to the signal to see if they actually open it for us. Ravens Lofty says, I wonder if SimRail uses gamma or lambda braking. Yeah, I read about this. I have no clue what they are using. I have the impression that the brake curve is in a way that at the beginning you do quite well with EP braking alone, then in the middle it gets harsh, and at the end it's getting easier again. So the brake curve in the middle of a braking sequence is harsher than the braking ability, but that is my impression so far. So what I wanted to demonstrate is that they actually implemented the roll away protection in ETCS. So if the train is starting to roll away unintentionally, ETCS is supposed to apply an emergency brake. Let's just check if that works, even if we are only in we are rolling. I had it in some connection. And ETCS intervened, but it is not intervening now. So maybe this only works if we're actually in some ETCS guided mode. Well, let's creep up to our signal. Here's our signal. We can see it. It is yellow at the bottom, allowing us to enter the station with 40. It is yellow at the top as well, so we have to prepare for a stop signal at the end. What does Spectre? The power handle looks like a giant ashtray. Here, this one. This is the power handle. This would be the brake handle here. Yeah, it is the brake. I think you're talking about the brake, this light grayish thingy here. One thing that I noticed is that the speed that is given on the ETCS speedometer and the speed that is given on this screen is not always entirely the same speed. So, see, it is 35 and 34. Now let's slow down the train. Can see here this blue and green indicator for the brake cylinders. Here the red one for the brake bar. Everything that is below 5 indicates that the air brake is used. We have also this indicator for the air brake being used. Door buttons. And then let's see if we actually managed to stop properly. Yeah, we did. 10 minutes to wait for this. I set a timer and will go right to the presentation, and I hope I won't miss the point where I have to stop the game from running away and we don't miss the time for leaving the station here. So ETCS cap signaling, we have talked about it in the video about Rivet Games Luzern Sursee S-Bahn Zentralschweiz, where we talked about all the things that are happening on the speed clock, more or less. And that was 3 kinds of speed control. It was ceiling speed monitoring, it was target speed monitoring, and release speed monitoring. And what happened on the speed clock was about like this. I replaced the Swiss speed indicators with Polish speed indicators, so that on our example track we have here a part that allows 80, a part that allows 140 starting here, and then it is getting reduced to 100 again. And let's say our 2 balises where we actually get a first information from the ETCS system are here at the part of track where we are allowed to go 80 from here. So I only put 1 balise here, but in real life we typically have 2 balises. It's always a pair of balises. We have not talked about this yet, but it is quite interesting because typically you have 2 balises. You see that in the track that they are typically in pairs, because if the train only reads 1 balise, then the train knows that something was wrong, so that it missed information. If it gets only 1 balise and not the second one, then the train knows, oops, there is some information missing. I have to alert the driver. If there was only 1 balise and it was broken for some reason and the train does not pick it up, then the train would not know that it missed some information. And obviously both balises can be broken, then this does not help. But in a typical situation you don't have both balises break down at the same moment, so that this is some sort of fail-safe implementation in the system. So how does it work? If you start driving, before you get any information in the Swiss scenario, it was with 40 when you're running with staff responsible mode. So this is the example that I got here from the Swiss system still. So you have the red one is your speed profile that you have to stay under. In the beginning you would have to stay under 40, then you are allowed to get 80, where you get your first information. At this point 140, then you have to slow down to 100. So what would we drive? Obviously to hug that speed curve as good as possible. We would stay below the 40, then accelerate to moderately to the 80. Then we have obviously to wait until our train has passed the speed changing point. Now we can accelerate to the 140, and then we have to go through a brake curve to hug the 100 line afterwards. So, and our ETCS will control us in 2 steps. It will control us with a warning curve and with an emergency brake application curve. And this it will do all the time regarding the speeds that are our ceiling speeds, and later then for the target speed monitoring with the speeds that are in our brake curve that are constantly declining when we're getting closer to the point where we have the speed restriction, and then it is controlling the speed restriction again. So it will not act up as soon as we get 1 click above the limit, but there is a certain leeway, and then we will get a warning if we are a couple of clicks over it, and if we still go over our limit, then we will get a reaction from our train. This is why I have those 2 lines above the actual limit. And this here is obviously the length of train that we have to wait until we can start accelerating, whereas here before the speed reduction there is always like a bit of safety margin so that the brake curves actually will get to the new speed or the stop before we reach the point. Before we get the first information from the balises in level 1, or before we get the first information from the balises via our radio control center, we will be in our staff responsible mode, the all-seeing eye crossed out, and this is typically limited to a speed that the national railway administrations can often select. It is not hardwired into the ETCS system, so that you can also switch between miles and kilometers, so it can be somewhere between 30, 40, 50 or whatever. Like in Germany you have by law a limit of 50 that a train can run without a working train protection system. So this is a thing that is obviously in the national law differently, so the system can be configured differently in a way. So Ravensloft, he says, Eye of Sauron train control system. Yeah, the all-seeing eye. Never forget to look into your Palantir before you start your train. Yeah, here you pick up the information from the balises. Well, they did not have balises in Mordor, otherwise it would have been a much more yellow environment there. And then the train has the information to control you, and then it will react with the all-seeing eye here. And then you get the information on your driver-machine interface. You get the darkish gray bar that shows you how far you can go up on the speed clock and how fast you can go at this point. And then if you are running across the point where this increases, then it will just increase without any ado. It will just flip, it will just be bigger, and then you know the whole train has passed this point and you can accelerate. It will not accelerate on its own. This is a thing that distinguishes ETCS in all its variations at the time being from a thing like the LZB in connection with the AFB. It will not take over control of your train and accelerating. So it's still the driver in connection with an AFB or cruise control system to allow the train to go faster here at this point. Now we are getting to the point when we are closing in on the brake curve. In the versions before 3.6.0, so that is the baseline 3 release 2, we had a phase where about 10 seconds before we hit the brake curve, before die Bremskurve angestoßen wird, it's what it says in German, before we actually shove the brake curve, before we get into the part where we should be slowing down, we had in those older versions this white segment that showed us that there is a limit incoming where we have to reduce, and then it would show the segment that we actually have to get our speed under again, so the speed that we have to lose until we get there. And we would hear this nice ETCS alarm that CD radar likes so much, beep beep, and now we know, oops, there is a speed reduction incoming. But this was deleted with the SRS 3.6, the baseline 3 release 2, and since in SimRail we have exactly an implementation of baseline 3 release 2, the newest version that is actually implemented. I don't think that there are actually regular implementations of the baseline 4 so far. We don't have it in SimRail. So we have to wait until about 4 seconds before we hit the brake curve. The segment would turn yellow, and also the needle of our speed clock would turn yellow if we are actually traveling in a speed that falls into the segment. And then we know, oh, soon enough we have to slow down. And at the same time, here on the left side we can see this thing that we also know from the LZB, an indication how far away we are still from the speed changing point. Again, obviously we get the alarm, or now in 3.6 the first time we get the alarm beep beep telling us that there is something incoming. And as soon as we hit the brake curve, actually, this thing starts to shrink. Like this, it is smaller, smaller, smaller until it is gone when we reach the point where, according to this the brake curve, we should be at the new speed. So give me a sec, I will have to stop my game so that we don't miss our time for, oops, going back into the presentation. Spoofed the animation here, but we were almost done here. That was the timer. Thank you very much. And yeah, then we are in the new speed control, and then it resumes with this static speed control that we have now of 10. We will see what the train does if we are actually staying beyond that curve in on one of the next slides. So what is new in the implementation that we have in SimRail is that, according to this information on the speed clock, where not only the white face is cut out now, has been deleted, we have this suggested brake intensity indicators. This is not a technical term. I've looked for a technical term for it, but the British rules are too old. They don't have it yet in their rules, so I don't know what there would be technical English term for it. When you are getting one of those yellow segments that tell you to brake and that you are going into a brake curve, then you also get an indication of what the train thinks, how much brake force is needed to comply with the brake curve. So the bigger the square in the top left corner, the more brakes you should probably employ to confirm with the brake curve. So this yellow square is big if your needle is close to the end of the brake curve segment here, telling you that there is some brake force needed, and it is getting smaller the more leeway there is. So the less brake force is needed to still comply with the brake force, and this obviously can vary while you are traveling through the brake curve. So in this situation, you are quite a bit away from the end of the brake curve, so this square gets smaller, and the closer your actually speed is actually to the end of the brake curve, the smaller this icon is, until it is actually vanishing. If there is no brake force anymore, there are more than 3 increments that I drew here on my presentation actually. But you get the idea. The bigger the square, the harder you should apply your brakes according to the idea that the train has. And if it is getting smaller, then you can release the brakes probably and still be able to get to the new speed in time to not violate the brake curve. It also comes in an orange and in a red version. We will talk about this in a slide to come, but we have already talked about this in the Luzern Sursi stream. If you're actually faster than the brake curve, but still in a segment where the train does not interfere with your driving, you're getting this orange part telling you, hey, you are too fast for the brake curve, you are too fast for the speed, employ brakes. And then obviously you have the biggest version of the square now in orange telling you you should really apply some brakes to not be too fast. And if you are getting beyond the threshold that the train has for actually employing brake force by its own discretion, then you get the red bar on top of the yellow one, and you get the red square in the corner, and obviously the indication that the train applies brakes. We'll get to this later. This does not mean that you will be stopped to a standstill. In many situations, ETCS just stops the train in so far as that it slows the train down until you are again on us at a safe speed and can resume without having to stop and go through the whole complex procedures that are necessary to resolve a situation where you get stopped by a penalty brake somewhere on the open track, and where you need the dispatcher and everything, and that causes obviously a lot of delay. So that if at all possible. You don't want to have this necessarily. Scenic speed monitoring, we will talk about this, recap this at Warszawa Centralna, I think is the name. We have here a couple of seconds still to go until we will hear the whistle that allows us to close our doors. We have a guard obviously on this train here. We don't have a camera that allows us to look at the train from the outside. Funny enough. Well, there are not too many passengers here. This one got caught between the seats. This indication is for the doors, by the way. They are green if they are closed, and if someone opens the doors, they will get blacked. Drzwi, I think, is door. There was
1401, ready for departure.
closing the doors. All doors are closed. Releasing the brakes. You can see the red hand going to 5. You can see the air going out of the brake cylinders on the 2 trucks or bogies, and then this indicator goes off. And we can proceed. Since we entered with a simple yellow that allowed us to go 40, we are still limited to 40. We obviously don't have the rule that we have in the German system where the new signal is governing our exit speed, but it wouldn't change a lot because we are getting another yellow at the bottom, so we are still at 40 until we hit the next signal. When driving without the HUD, it is always important to see or to look at this gauge. Radio 2. Radio check after switching channels. Neutral section. Neutral section over, track speed 80, and at the next signal we are relieved from the 40 that comes from the exit signal. So when passing this signal we should be allowed to go the old track speed of 60 until our train has fully passed the 80 sign, and then we can go to 80. So without the HUD, it is already getting more challenging. Stadium to the left. The indicators for SAP and the Chuvak are here, SAP and SIFA. And Warsaw. I think we're going to go the 80. Hi Mabot24, nice to have you on the stream, and we are speeding. Go beyond the 80 again, please. After this station to the left, that is all only for the slow lines. We're getting into the tunnel that takes us to the central station in Warsaw. Signals are green at the moment. There will be a 60 reduction and then an entry signal, so let's be cautious. This is not our signal, that is the one for the line to the right. So we can still go 80 at the moment. Flashing yellow telling us 40 or 60. Here is the 60 line speed. Here's already the signal, so I can have the train coast. The 60 for the line speed reduction, we already are good. The 40 for the signal, I have to employ a bit more brakes. But good. So without the HUD, how do you know how much brakes you're applying? You can see it here on this dial for the EP brakes, and then on the red hand here for the air brakes. And stops at the last signal, but this is okay for us because we have to stop at Warszawa Centralna at any rate. The blue shunting signals don't really bug us. So I wonder if this slideshow quality of the stream is due to being underground. We'll see. Or because of the timer that I have running. It's always a good idea to draw up far enough to be able to see the signal. And obviously not too far. Still far enough so that the whole train is there. And we have 6 minutes now for the next part of the presentation. Until I have to stop my game again. So, second part of the presentation. So today, practical lesson. Today, every time, like every week, practical lessons and theoretical lessons combined. For the first time, I'm driving without the HUD, so this is why I'm explaining more of the practical stuff as I experienced it with driving HUD-less. We have talked about the general principle, what happens on the speed clock. Now let's talk about the three things that we have: the ceiling speed monitoring, the target speed monitoring, and the release speed monitoring. The ceiling speed monitoring is more or less the easiest version of the speed monitoring because we have one speed limit that gets monitored by ETCS. I have quite a lot of directives and stuff that I put to here if you want to read it up. The Swiss ones, the German ones, and the British rules, and also the part of the system requirement specifications. So the baseline 3, here the 3.6 revision 2, where you can read it up if you want to know it more exactly. I have still not found any Polish directives that tell drivers how to deal with ETCS. There is a lot of stuff about how ETCS is supposed to be implemented, but they point you quite often to more specific regulations that come with the trains that are actually to be run, and I have not found them yet. So, but since it is a uniform system, more or less for the whole ETCS country, we have those rules and regulations and can use them for what we have in Poland. So ceiling speed monitoring from ETCS is the idea. You have a limit, and then you have, in Swiss and German, you would call it warn, caution, alarm, whatever. This is a speed that is about 4 to 5 kilometers above the limit, so 4 to 5 clicks above the limit. And if you are, we'll see that. And above this threshold, we have a second threshold that is the Eingriff in German. Again, this is when the train actually takes action and employs brakes. So if you are developing with your speed, accelerating and going beyond the limit, there is a sector where nothing happens in this, so you can go beyond the limit. You can maybe get points subtracted from the game, but the ETCS system is not reacting still, so your speed clock can actually be beyond the end of the grayish sector without anything happening. But as soon as you hit this threshold or go beyond it, the speed that is the alarm speed, then the system will react and give you an audible alarm and also show this segment that you are beyond the top level of your speed limit in orange. Also the speed clock needle will be shown in orange, and this is telling you that you have to slow down again. This is the alarm that you get. It's not the nice deet that you get all the time in ETCS if ETCS wants attention, but it's the alarm where it is drawing attention even more and telling you that you need to take action, otherwise something bad will happen. And if you're still accelerating and go beyond the second threshold, the emergency brake curve or line here in this case, then the train will take action. The orange part will be red. Also the speed clock needle will be red, and the train will play another alarm that is even more alarming here at this point. This constant sound, and then it will first apply if it is still handle. If the train can still handle it with a service brake application, it will apply the pneumatic brakes with a full brake application. That means it will lower the brake pipe pressure typically to 3.5 bars. Accurate noise reproduction, we will get to this later, how accurate it actually was. This is why I made the symbols here, so that I don't have to play it or sing it. And that means it will not drain the brake pipe completely, but it will use a service brake application first, and only if this is not deemed enough by the system. So if the speed is still going beyond and can't be reduced with a service brake application, then the system can also drain the brake pipe completely and perform an emergency brake application with a completely drained brake pipe. And this obviously then typically results in the train being stopped on the track. Not necessarily so, but often. Every time that the train is employing the brakes, it will show this indication here. Again, I have to stop my game and go back to the presentation here, so that the driver knows the train has actually taken action and employed the brakes on its own. Thank you, timer. Thank you, timer. Dismiss. It's good. So that was not the ETCS taking action or requiring my attention, but it was the timer. So yeah, every time the train is employing the brakes on its own, it will show this badge. It looks a bit like a ribbon that soldiers have on the chests for the medals that they won. But this is actually meant to tell you that the brakes are employed. And then the train will reduce the speed until we are below the limit. And then typically the train will release the brakes again and will hand back control to the driver. So if avoidable, at any rate, the train will not stop on the track, and the penalty brake application will come to an end autonomously and will let the driver go on, so that we don't cause any more delay. This one was also a thing that the speed clock was able to show, but again it is with the white segment before we had the baseline 3 revision 3 to R2 version, the SRS 3.6 that we have in SimRail implemented. So this you won't see in SimRail, but with lower earlier versions of ETCS it is totally possible. Target speed monitoring compared to the ceiling speed monitoring is a bit more complex, because we do not only have one limit, but we have a reduction in our limit. So at a certain point we have to drop from one limit to the next, and that means that we have to calculate brake curves. Since the train cannot just slow down from a higher speed to a lower speed in an instant, he has to do it gradually, and for that the system calculates brake curve. And again, we have two of them. One is the one where we get a warning, and the one above is the one where the train applies brakes on its own. So if we are going beyond the limit, everything is cool. We will get our indication that we are approaching a brake curve. This is why it is yellow, and we will get this, as we have seen, about 4 seconds before we actually hit the brake curve. Here in our example, the train failed to slow down properly, and it will run beyond the warning curve here, and this is why the system will again use the orange color to show the driver that she or he is too fast and has actually cut the warning curve here. And you will hear the alarm again. And if the train is still going too fast and is also going beyond the action curve, the brake action curve, then you will see again the red one always put above the yellow one. The yellow one will be the brake curve where it is good, and if you are beyond it, then either orange or red, depending on whether you're only beyond the warning curve or also beyond the action curve, brake application curve. So alarms and the color codes are the same here, in connection though with the brake curve. And again, in this situation I have read, you will not get a full brake scenario with the brake pipe only reduced to 3.5 bar, but you will typically get at once a full emergency brake application with brake pipe completely drained to 0, again with the same thing, and then the train gets slowed down. And from what I have read, there is a difference between the levels. On level 1 you would actually be stopped with your train on the track, whereas level 2 provides the possibility that this emergency brake application is released as soon as it is possible to hand over control back to the driver, and the train is slowed down below the control curves again, so that the train can safely go on. Yeah, that was ceiling speed control or monitoring, target speed monitoring, and the third one, and this is what I'm doing here in Warszawa Centralna again, is the release speed monitoring. What is that good for? Let's say we are coming from a track speed of 140 and have to stop at a red signal. So typically we have to do something like this. It's a quite harsh brake curve, but whatever. Train has to slow down and come to a stop a bit in front of the signal, not like the tip of the train actually touching the signal, but with like 20-30 meters to go, so that you can still see the signal and that there is still a bit of a margin of error. And we have talked about this when we discussed the differences between level 1 and level 2. And level 1, where we get our new movement authority from the balises, we have to crawl across the signal to get and read the balises, and this was what the release speed is for. And this is why our system is controlling us only to this point here, and after that, after we reach the release speed, it will only monitor and control and enforce the release speed. So we are still in full supervision. We have our gray bar telling us we can go 140. Here is where the brake curve begins. That means latest here we have our yellow segment that is going down to 0 here at this point, because we have to stop. We don't only have to slow down, but we're going down to 0 because we have to stop. But as you are hopefully able to see, the last bit of the brake curve is not full yellow, but it is cut in two halves. One part is yellow, telling you that you still have to slow down to 0, and the other gray one is showing you the release speed. That means as soon as your needle or the hand on your speed clock is in this segment here, you might still have to slow down to be able to stop and not run the red signal, but the system will not enforce it anymore. As soon as you are in this split segment, then you are below the release speed, and the system will not stop you from running the red signal anymore. The speed is also shown in digits here in this part. And obviously, like before, 4 seconds before that, you will get shown the yellow curve and part, and you can prepare for complying with it, and you get the alarm. And in the older versions before baseline 3 release 2, we also had this white thing indicating us that, but that was deleted in the version that is implemented in SimRail, so that I can take it out of the presentation here. Yeah, and now from this point, the system ETCS will only control us to the release speed. If we are crossing the red signal and are getting the information about the red signal from the balises or from our radio control center that we are now crossing a red signal, then we will get stopped at this point if we are not taking any countermeasures for that. We will get to this later, how we can actually pass a red signal. Then there are always situations where we are allowed to pass a red signal, but typically before we actually try to pass the red signal, the system will not stop us and enforce the brake curve anymore. This is in level 1, so that we are actually able to pick up new movement authorities from the balises, and obviously it also allows some leeway of getting the train closer to the signal so that it does not foul any switches anywhere at the back or whatever. Yeah, this is what you see. The yellow part still shrinks until you actually go to the point where you are supposed to stop, but the gray part will always remain and cover the segment that that agrees with the given release speed. And yeah, this is what the system controls here. And if you're going faster than the release speed, then again you will get an orange needle and then a red needle, and the train will slow you down to the release speed again. Okay, those are the 3 different speed monitorings: ceiling, target, release speed. Makes sense if you look at it. And the next thing we will look at when we are at Zachodnia, I think. Return to the game. Now I did something weird to my lights, I'm afraid. I just wanted to turn off the HUD. Wait for the whistle. Signal has turned to green, thankfully.
Ready for departure.
From the position of the brake handle, you can also see what your brake valve is set. We entered with 40 signal. That means we have to not go faster than 40 until we pass the signal. As soon as we have passed the signal, we are back to the 60 line speed. Tip of the train is enough here for passing the signal. That means it should be good now to go 60. Quick check, turning the HUD on. Yes, it is 60. From here, 90 is track speed. Oh, we still have to pass it with the whole train. So I guess now it should be okay to go towards the 90. But it's only a very short piece of track until we get to Warszawa Zachodnia. Already the last automatic signal. Next signal will be the entry signal. Entry signal is telling us that the next one will be at red. What is okay, because we want to stop anyway, but no speed restriction connected with it. Aiming for 40 for when the train hits the platform. Station roof is sometimes a nice indicator for how far we can safely go. Don't open the doors before the hissing of the brakes stopped. Otherwise you might get docked. 8 minutes, so I can punch in 7:30 here on my timer. And we can use the time for more recapping. Recapping means now recapping from last week, when we were talking about what actually do we have to do when we get stopped in front of a red signal, like here. Situation like before, we obviously went through the target speed monitoring and we stopped here in front of the red signal. And now the signal cannot be turned to green. But yeah, this is what we see on our ETCS screen. The needle is still yellow because we still have to stop in front here. The brake curve has shrunk to almost 0. The gray bar with the release speed of 20 is still visible. That means we can go with 20 to the signal, but we would be shot down by the police as soon as we try to pass the red signal. So how can we pass it in case, yeah, full supervision is still on, in case we get a subsidiary signal like last week at the end of our service at Sari, I think it was. How can we tell our ETCS controlled train that we are actually allowed to pass this signal here? So what did we do? On level 2, again, on level 1 it is easier. We will see that at the end of this slide. On level 2, what did we have to do? We had to go into the override menu, pick the EoA, the end of authority mode. And what happened then? The brake curve was deleted. We went from full supervision to limited supervision. Oh, I set my timer to 30 hours, 5 minutes and 8 seconds. No, I don't think that we are waiting for so long. I have to keep it in mind. 30 hours is a bit long. Yeah, we went to staff responsible mode here, from the full supervision to staff responsible mode. And what we are doing is now our own responsibility, but it allows us to pass the red signal without getting shot down by the system that wants to prevent us bad. And at the same time, we were shown this icon here, where CD Radar said this is the same icon that we have from PZB. I think he was talking especially about the icons that we have on the Vectron cap, for example, where the Befehls button for the PZB, the override button, has this because it allows us to pass a red signal. And this is what we saw on our screen here. And so we knew that the ETCS system had registered that we want to pass with authority a red signal, and it will not stop us from doing this. And yeah, that's what we did. What happened? We still did not get any indications of how fast we can go on our speed clock. Obviously we can now go beyond here, so this is why I cut down this red line to 20, so there is a window where we can drive underneath. Still in staff responsible mode. What we were able to do, to click this button here, and then we were shown the maximum speed that the system is controlling us to with this little bar here. And because we passed a subsidiary signal on a semi-automatic signal, it was 40 that we were allowed to go at this point as soon as we passed the signal. So while passing it, we were controlled to 20 still from the release speed, and after that it was good for us to go 40, and this we were able to show on our display here by clicking this button. So we were able to accelerate to 40 and went through this block with 40. And how did we get back into the normal level 2 full supervision mode, even though the signal was green, and after the signal at least we were allowed to go 140 again? How can we tell this to our ETCS control train? In level 2 again, because it is more complicated there, we had to go into the main menu and click the start again, just like at the beginning of our journey. Start again. And what happened? There was this hourglass appearing on the top of our screen, and it was traveling from left to right, indicating that someone was happening. And then we got switched into on-site mode. It was yellow first, it was flashing because it wanted an acknowledge from us, and it was at this point controlling us then to 20. We acknowledged it and we were in on-site mode now. And again, we didn't do it, I think, but again there was the possibility of clicking this icon, and then we can see the speed that the system is controlling us to. And on-site, after starting it again, was 20 here. So actually we lowered the speed profile at this point again, so we had to prepare for this by slowing down before we hit the start again, so that we don't get stopped by the lower control speed here. Then we could roll across with 20 across the balises here, and then the train repositioned, and in level 2 after that we were back into the full supervision mode and were able to accelerate again. So that was what we did already last week, but I wanted to show this on a slide as well. In level 1 it is actually much easier for that. You don't have to go into this override mode. You don't have to start it again. You can just pass the signal, and as soon as you're passing the signal, you will be switched to on-site. You still have to acknowledge, though, that you are now in on-site, and then you get controlled by on-site until you get to the next signal. You pass it, and then you are automatically switched back to full supervision. Again, you can use this to turn on the speed that you are controlled against. And when you're doing this, when you're doing this here in the on-site mode, you will also see the route planning section again and see what is happening in on the track to come. We will get to this in later slides. Then later I can stop the timer now because I don't think that we need it anymore when we're running. So what I wanted to add a new, because it is now implemented here in SimRail, what was not implemented in the Luzern-Sursee thing are level changes actually. When you're running from one point to the other, then you're running through sections that are controlled by ETCS, sections that are not controlled by ETCS, some sections that are controlled by level 1, some level 2, and in times to come maybe even level 3 or anything else. So how is this signaled, by the way? When you're starting like we did with National Train Control, here SHP, and you're running up, and this will happen quite soon when we are resuming our service here, you will pass a sign that looks like this. It tells you ETCS L2 on a yellow board, telling you, aha, you're approaching the beginning of a section where there is ETCS level 2 control installed. This sign is called Vyskashnik ETCS 7, and at the same time your driver machine interface will show you this underneath the speed clock with the arrow 2, telling you that you are approaching the begin of a level 2 controlled section. When you're getting closer to this, so this is according to the German rules like about 1 kilometer before it actually starts, the system will ask you to acknowledge this. So this was what was grayish before will be yellow, and you will have the yellow flashing frame around it with the acknowledge thing that asks you to acknowledge it, and you will hear the message sound from ETCS. So if you don't acknowledge that, train will apply a penalty brake. If you acknowledge it, you will see this again. All right, we are approaching still a change to level 2. Technically, this can also happen when you are going into level 2, then you will just get the screen that you get when you are actually in level 2 control. And this sign typically marks the spot where the control by ETCS level 2 actually starts. It is called the Vyskashnik ETCS 8. And here at this point, you get the information about how fast you can go on your speed clock, just as we have talked about it. And instead of SHP on the side screen on the left, you will have the icon for level 2 control, now without the arrow. So that is how to get in an ETCS controlled scenario with the level 1. It is more or less the same. If it is not limited supervision, then you have to also acknowledge the limited supervision mode of operation, but that is a different story. Then you're driving and driving and driving, and at some point you come to the end of the ETCS level 2 controlled section, and this will introduce to you or announce to you more or less the same way, but you don't have a sign introducing the end, but the cab signaling interface will now show you the arrow together with the national system that you are going back to. In Poland, typically the SHP, and most often this will be connected with a reduction in track speed to 160 or lower, because typically on ETCS controlled tracks you can go faster and then you're dropping back to the national control. But this is not necessarily so, but it is often combined and happening at the same time, so that you actually have to slow down, and this is why you get a brake curve indication here. At some point, the system will ask you to acknowledge, so just like here with yellow. So every time something is yellow and flashing, hit the acknowledge button. You will also be told by this beep beep sound that the system wants you something to do. This will be, then you go back to this display until you actually hit the point where the ETCS control ends. And this is marked with this sign here, and this Krasnik ETCS 9, and then you are back here in the National Train Control SHP. The difficult thing here, and you can actually experience this in this scenario here that we are playing at the moment, is that you are now back to signals, and therefore you have in this phase of transition be extra cautious what your signals are showing you. When you're driving according to the indications on your DMI, you might get used to not pay attention to the signals at all, so that you miss the announcement of a red signal that is just behind the end of the ETCS control. So be extra cautious when going through this process and look out for yellow signals, so that you are actually able to stop in front of a red signal that might be just after the end of the ETCS controlled scenario. When you're going from one ETCS level to the other, like going from ETCS level 2, like here, after driving a bit to ETCS number 1, it is actually easier. The principle is the same. You will get the arrow pointing you are about to transition to level 1. But then, as soon as you get there, it will actually happen. You don't need to acknowledge anything anymore. You'll get to a point where you have typically both signs. The one that is telling you here starts ETCS level 1, and at the same time here ends ETCS level 2. It can be next to each other or on top of each other. That would be the Viscashnik ETCS 5 with the here starts ETCS level 1, and then it will just transition without you having to acknowledge typically. Sometimes when you're going to limited supervision, then you have to acknowledge the transition to the operating mode limited supervision. But this is not simulated in any game that I know. Yeah, and here, just to show you what signs we have in the Viscashnik ETCS variety, end of level 1 would be ETCS 6, so 7, 8, 9 is for level 2. Obviously here, this would be the start for ETCS level 1. If you're getting out of one ETCS level into the other one, I think you're not getting one of those yellow signs. At least I have not seen them in the game, but I can't be super sure about it. So the system for level 1 would obviously be the same. Yellow is always announcing, the white one is the start, and the one crossed out with the red line is the end. And here we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That leaves us with the question, what is then 1, 2, 3? Level 1 supervision, limited supervision is the 1, 2, 3. So we have extra signs for this ETCS level 1 limited supervision, and so on. Then the Viscashnik ETCS 10 is that sign that we know from Luzern Sursi and other implementations of ETCS. That would be the block marker. And sections where we don't have enough signals standing about, we can use this to separate the blocks in real life for the driver to see. And here in Poland, I have not seen them yet, because we have all those auto block signals that separate the blocks from each other, and we don't need it. Okay, the last bit of presentation is for later, what actually happens on your DMI. And Mabot, I don't think that I am late on my schedule. At least I hope I managed to stop the game, that I am not late. I'm actually 2 minutes early, and I have to wait 1 more minute until we can proceed with our train here. I just tried to shorten the waiting times at the stations in Warszawa by throwing in presentations, especially recapping the ETCS cap signaling, the speed monitorings, ceiling speed, target speed, release speed monitoring, the sequence for passing a red signal with authority but without a movement authority, and the level changes. No, it is the scenario, the Warsaw to Katowice scenario. Otherwise, I would not have been able to stop the game from getting me behind schedule. This is why I chose to be in a scenario. Also, I want to practice driving with the HUD off.
1401, ready for departure.
And to not annoy dispatchers and other peoples. I'm practicing this in the scenarios in the single player mode. So we got a green, we entered with 90 track speed. That means there is nothing prohibiting us from leaving the station with 90 track speed, I think. Yes. True. SAP. I think it is the truck's locomotive, right? Where this guy always tells you SAP, SAP, instead of a sound, a warning sound. Obviously without the HUD, we have to be more cautious not to miss any indicator. Speed limit 90, but that was just nur Zugbeeinflussung, yeah. SAP is almost as charming as Zugbeeinflussung. Zugbeeinflussung. $100 here until the train has passed. The BR-189 on Trains in World gave me nightmares. Well, that is a locomotive that can give you nightmares. I think there was a 120 sign here, wasn't there? Nigga. Yeah, that was a 120 sign. At least the 182 has a woman speaking. With an Austrian accent, even. So, just a quick check. No, we're not stopping anywhere until we get to the same station that we stopped. And here's the 160 sign last week. On accents, I'm not practical in Germany as well. The ICE3 in Trains in World actually has a very pronounced Northern Bavarian accent, in my opinion. And here was the sign for level 2. You can see level 2 is incoming. I just thought we passed the white sign. Now we have to acknowledge. I acknowledged. We are back to level 2. And now we are in. And here it is, the white sign. ETCS level 2. Yeah, they might have had the wrong sign here, right? It was not a yellow sign announcing it, but it was a white sign where we expected a yellow one. Have to rewatch it on the video. And the doo-doo that everyone likes so much. Accelerating to 160. That doo-doo was for the Vyskashnik 18 or something like this, 18. Zugbeeinflussung. What is that, Spectre? I cannot really read it without losing my grip on. On the driving. Barbarian, like the München im Himmel. Sorgi! Ah, now I'm there. Now I am there. Here you can see the cruise control had us go into the warning area. There was again a... Yeah, I still don't know if I actually have to... use this button. Zugbeeinflussung, Sorgi. Yeah. But that is more southern Bavarian. Now we have to acknowledge the change to radio 2, but we are already to radio channel 2. Now there is a honking sign coming on. Spectre says, I wonder how they did that at the ICE factory, drawing straws to see who has to do the recording. Yeah, it's really interesting. If they just got in some of their engineers to do the recording. So, let's just stop the game for a moment and go and finish the presentation for what I have been talking about already here. This thing that we see, the driver machine interface display, and what we can see on this route planning area, because that is something. Also the text messages that we have below the speed clock, we did not have any of that in the Luzern-Sursee implementation, but we have it now here. So this is more or less the track that you have in front of you, like we talked about this with CD Radar last night, last week. It's a bit like Guitar Hero. You have some assignments, orders coming from the top going to the bottom. As soon as they reach the 0 position here, this is where you are, then you have to take care of them, and they go into this display here, and then you have to react to it. So if you want to imagine it, this is the track in front of you, this is where your locomotive is, the front end of your locomotive facing this direction, and you're going there, and it is like in an old arcade racing game the car that you're driving is always at the same spot and the world is coming towards you. So this is how to read that. You can switch the distance that you can see to the front by using those plus and minus buttons. So here in this example, I've switched it already to 4000. You start with only 1000, I think, and then with every click on the minus, you see 2000, 4000. The furthest that I've seen are 16,000 meters, so 16 kilometers at front, and I always found that 4 kilometers to the front is a good thing to do. So if you are looking 16 kilometers ahead, then you only get confused because a lot of stuff is happening there that will not be relevant anymore when you get there. 1000 meters is a bit short because then you can get jumped by stuff. This thing here in the middle is a gradient indicator. The darkish gray ones with the minus signs here and a number tell you that this is a downhill gradient, giving you the number in the segments that are closer to your train position with per mil. So in the train sim world in HUD, this would be marked with a 0.4%, whereas in the light grayish version with the darker writing on it, this would be the uphill gradient here. So you can also see if the train is climbing or running downhill, so quite convenient. What else can we see here? Indications for where there is a limit in speed. This would be a downward pointing triangle with a line that connects it to a certain position that is obviously coming towards you when actually you are coming towards this point. And it is also giving you the target speed from this point. It is yellow if you're actually traveling faster than this target speed, and it will be white if you are already below that target speed. An increase will have the triangle pointing upwards, and it will be typically white because you don't have to react to it. And one very important thing, and this is what I wanted to come back to Ravenslofty, because she said that you cannot drive economically because the brake curves are so harsh, is not that one. You also have a graphical indication that there is a part where the speed is lower than that. So this reminds you a bit of the EoA, where you have a line like this running on the left side, giving you a graphical idea about how much you have to reduce your speed. Hi, you're still here there. This one here, you're actually getting an indication at what point you will be getting the yellow brake curve here. So if you want to drive more economically and only use the EP brakes or the electric brakes without using pneumatic brakes here and regain your energy, then you can start applying the brakes before you get to this point that is marked with the yellow line here. So this is actually quite convenient because we don't get jumped by all of a sudden the speed clock turning to this display with the yellow braking curve, and you have 4 seconds to get your brakes ready and your throttle down and everything. So if you are seeing this line approaching, that you can prepare, get the throttle down, get the brakes ready, and already try slowing down so that you don't have to go through the brake curve, always hugging the upper end. This will only be there, this yellow line, if you actually have to slow down. So if you are traveling already below that speed, then it will not appear here. So this is very inconspicuous but extremely helpful in my opinion. An indication what we have here is that icon shows us that the radio connection is good. If the radio connection is not good, that means we have lost it for more than 40 seconds. At least this is what I got from the German rules, I think. Then you will see this icon instead, showing this thing severed and showing it in red on gray, asking you for attention. That means the system is good with 40 seconds without having contact to home. So radio connection established every 40 seconds, it seems to be deemed enough before you're actually informing the driver about it. Another thing that goes into brake curves, what this icon tells you is if you switched the system to low adhesion, that actually works in, I think, the special menu here, where you can go to a mode where you have a low adhesion. That should make the brake curves less strict and give you more time to slow down, especially if there are leaves on the track or ice or whatever. And if you have this mode activated, then you will see this icon here at this point. Some rules, like the German, say that it is not used in their area. You're coming from the Netherlands and have experience with automatische treinbeïnvloeding. They had this gladspoor button, what did something similar and making the brake curves less severe. And Ravensloft says, I don't think you get that if you're going through a defined radio hole throw, right? Probably not. So if the system knows that there will not be any radio connection and you are relying on balises in that section or whatever, then I don't think it will show you that. But I have not looked into this before. So we can try this later maybe and see if the brake curves actually get less severe if we go to this mode. You can turn it on in the game, I have checked, and then you will see this icon at this point. If it actually does anything to the brake curves, I don't know. So that is the low adhesion mode icon. Well, let's take it out of the picture. So how does it work with the assignments that come in here? Like this one, that will be the assignment that, according to the rules, tells you that the main circuit breaker will be switched off automatically. If we actually have to do anything on our train when we are running under ETCS, I have not been able to establish for the Pendolino because I don't have a manual for it. If we actually have to use this button especially in those dead sections, or if the train just turns on and off the throttle autonomously, as the TGV, for example, does it on the TVM 430 guided lines, because it is going too fast for the driver actually to react to those neutral sections or not. Have not been able to establish this. So this is what it looks like. This thing is coming towards you. I actually went to, or took it upon me to try to simulate the effect that it is coming towards you slow and then it is accelerating, because as you can see, the same section of track of 500 is much bigger here than this section of 500, and then the same distance on the display is now 1 kilometer and then 2 kilometers. So this is not always this is not a linear thing here. This is why at the same speed it comes slowly, and at the end it comes faster and faster towards you. And then it vanishes from the route planning area and appears underneath your speedometer, so you know this is imminent. And then you will hear the beep beep sound, and at the same time sometimes you get a sentence telling you what it is about. In this case, Wskaźnik E8A. What is this sign here? What in Poland does not order you to open your main circuit breaker, but to set your throttle to zero, your power to zero, so that you're not drawing any power. And yeah, again, if we have to do this on the Pendolino, or at least in ETCS controlled sections, this is done autonomously. If you know that, let us know in the comments, please. Superpol says, for the Austrian locos, the voice is the same as the station announcements. The voice is from Chris Lohner, a well-known journalist and presenter. But she doesn't say all the announcements word by word, but rather she spoke her voice in once in a complicated way from which all possible announcements are generated. I think in the Baureihe 182 it's also her voice. Nice bit of information. Thank you very much, Paul. And this is this is a thing that DTG did, or is this a thing that is actually done in the real life station announcement or Baureihe 182s, so that it has been simulated and reproduced in the DTG routes? Well, we'll get back to this in an instant, and I will get back to my presentation. So here, this was the neutral section begin, and this would be the neutral section end icon. Compared to this, main circuit breaker switched on automatically, at least here in the game. This switched off automatically is told to us with an alarm and with a text message. So this hints a bit to the fact that we actually have to take any action. After that, when it ends the neutral section, we don't have to do any action. We don't get an alarm and we don't get a text message. It just appears below the speed clock. Ravens Lofty says, SimRail is giving me green aspects with 0 kilometer speed limits. Interesting. The red aspects with 20 or 40 are explicable or explainable, but green aspects with 0? In real life, so ÖBB bought her voice. Interesting. And what did Raven Lofty link us here? Can I see that actually? Yeah. Yes. In 786 meters, 0 kilometers with a green aspect. Well, I've never encountered this before. Well, finish the presentation here. What else can we see here? Those yellow thingies are telling us that we are approaching and then entering a section where the emergency brake needs to be suppressed, because we don't want to end up with our train in a tunnel, or in this case more likely in on a bridge, on a viaduct, so that we cannot really get our passengers out of the train. In the rules, at least in the older rules, they also had this icon in not yellow but in gray when it was supposed to appear below the speed clock. This does not happen in the game. Maybe this is a thing of the baseline 3 revision 2 again, so that they skipped the gray icon and now put the yellow icon underneath the speed clock. But I am not sure about this. Use your horn or whistle. Looks like this. It can come down, and as soon as you have to do it, you will get the beep beep alarm, and at the same time in the text messages you see the Vizcashnik 6B thing. And this is because the Vizcashnik 6B signs look like this, the 2 car triangle signs on top of each other that require you to use your horn. And that is also, well, it is also sanctioned by the scoring system in SimRail. If you don't, so I guess that you know that. And it will hopefully typically coincide with you passing those signs at the same time when this icon appears underneath your speed clock and you get the beep beep and the text message. Other text messages that I have seen that the system does here is it always tells you if you're passing one of those Vizcashniks, the indicators that tell you that you're passing the last automatic signal in an auto block. What is helpful to know that you are now approaching a section that is a controlled section, and getting out of the auto block signals. Why exactly it does that, I cannot tell you. It is helpful, but what the central idea is that you need to know that you're passing a Vizcashnik 18 or 18. I can't tell you. What we have seen already in the game is the Vizcashnik 28. That is the one that requires you to change your radio channel, possibly. That's what I wanted to say. It also gives you the channel that you are supposed to switch to. And this one actually needs to be acknowledged. So not all the messages need to be acknowledged, some of them need to be. And this is one that needs to be acknowledged. What also needs to be acknowledged is the Viscashnik 24. This is this one that you can find on some signals where you are sent into the opposite direction track. And this is also to be acknowledged, and you even get this text message: confirm driving in the opposite direction on the left track. Also that needs to be acknowledged then, because you have, as we have not talked about in a presentation, but on the stream, because you have to change the light setup on your train then when you're going on the left track, and then again when you're going back on the normal track, then you have to set it back obviously to the normal setup. I think that is what I wanted to talk about. Not necessarily. If you have more of those assignments coming in, it can be quite tight there. So if you have it arranged like this, they are to be read like this, from left to right, 1, 2, 3, and then the next row starts. But this is, well, almost quite obvious, but sometimes they look a bit like they are sitting on the same spot. But they are arranged always in a way that you have to read it from left to right, row wise, from top to bottom. No, from bottom to top, sorry. And as soon as one of them goes underneath the speed clock, then the others will change place and, yeah, go into the next section, so that you always know who will be next for you. I think that's it with the presentation. And now we have covered a lot of the ETCS cap signaling. There are still some special situations for passing level crossings or passing red automatic signals that are permissive. But I think we will cover this when we, at one point in time, go back and cover those situations with normal signaling too. And now comes the relaxing part, because now we are guided by ETCS level 2, running along the line. Here is special adhesion. Let's see if we can do this. Slippery rail while we are running. And you can see the icon that I showed you on the presentation. And now our braking curves should be less severe. The dogs want out again. I can see it. They are nudging me from both sides. Kara, what are you carrying about? This is my t-shirt. Where did you find that? Maybe we can actually see what our system does if we are going beyond our ceiling speed. Towards the 165. We're seeing the orange one, but we are not getting a penalty brake yet. Now we're getting the alarm. Now we hit the alarm curve. And now we hit the curve where the train was actually doing something. We saw the icon for brakes applied. We saw the red. Now we have to get the throttle back to 0. But we are already given leeway to resume. Maybe not in the middle of a neutral section. And the train handed control back to us, so it was not necessary to get the train to a stop. Level change to 1 was announced. Here is the sign. Here's the level 2 end sign. We did not need to acknowledge it. What we need to acknowledge is the change to radio channel 1. And now we transition from ETCS level 2 to ETCS level 1, as we can see. A level change that did not need to be acknowledged by itself. And I think that we should run up to a red signal soon, so that we can see how different this works in level 1 compared to level 2 what we had last week. And what I had said, you can see that the balises are typically put up in pairs. So, where are the next ones? Unfortunately, there are none at the moment. Here. Tick tick. 1, 2. They typically don't come alone. They have here a pair, here a pair. For both directions. And here always the emergency brake suppression icons, so that we don't end up on a viaduct. Now you can see already the yellow line that I talked about. We know we have to slow down. We can get the throttle back and start applying brakes. And as soon as the yellow line hits the 0, ping, there is the yellow brake curve. Top left, we have the suggested intensity indicator, and the 0 is coming in It's not yellow anymore because now we have the yellow here on the speed clock. Here is the last automatic signal with Kashnik 18. So the signal that we are running up to, and that is red, is most probably a controlled one. Now we are far below the brake curve. You can see how the intensity is adjusting, or the suggested intensity indicator gets bigger and smaller. You can see the release speed here. We have a release speed of 20. While we're approaching the signal. And as soon as we are below the 20, let's stick to it a bit. Brake curve is catching up with us and getting closer to the signal. Now the brake curve is still shrinking, but the release speed is not moving. So maybe we can do a test for trying to pass the signal without doing anything. Accelerate. We can see the brake curve going below our actual speed, our current speed, without stopping us. But now we try to pass the signal. Still within the release speed, and as soon as we hit the balises, it shut us down. Well, game does not allow the system to react because it reacted with an in-game sanction and subtracted us 1000 points most probably and set us back in front of the red signal. Well, okay, so what actually do? We contact the dispatcher, tell him...
To 1401, radio check.
And now...
This is Corrective. I read you loud and clear.
Yes. You must have been sleeping, dispatcher, so we woke him up and he set the signal. And now still our ETCS system on level 1 does not know that the system changed. We cannot get the information radioed in. So this is why we have to pass the signal with release speed and then get the new movement authority from the balises. See if we can actually see the balises that we are passing here. Must be already on them here. So we're still... Aha! No, they actually crossed it. We are in an authorized passing, so this is nice. So this is actually simulated. They stopped us. But why they stopped us with an unauthorized passing is a bit unclear, because actually the system should have updated also the balises. Maybe we confused it because we tried to pass it before. So this was what should have happened before, when the signal was still red, not after it changed to green. After it changed to green, it should have given us a new movement authority, no? Well, but now we actually fell into the post trip. Time for written order number 1, yeah, exactly. But if we are passing the end of a movement authority at a green signal in level 1, we probably don't need a written order to do that, right? We saw also the runaway protection kicking in, stopping the train from running away. This is the icon for the post trip. No, actually not the post trip mode. Well, yeah, it's the post trip mode. Again, the runaway protection, because I did not start the train. It wants me to acknowledge because it activated the runaway protection. Now let's see if we can get this train running again without it running away. But that's interesting. It is still stopping us from rolling. Dispatcher is not talking to us. Any way we cannot start it again? The runaway protection is kicking in all the time. Now let's activate the spring brake for a second. See what I can do. I cannot restart it. Can I use the override scenario here? Probably I can, to get out of this situation. If this is... Oh, you can actually see here an icon for spring brake engaged. Interesting. What is out? So with the end of authority mode, I get out of the post-trip mode again here with a limit to 40. Yeah, you said it, Ravenslofty. You need to start off missions. No, it's end of authority. It's the only thing that we can do. But we agree that this is surprising, right? That we should not get this on the balises of a green signal, a signal that has switched to green. In level 1. Staff responsible and reverse over the balises. I don't think so. I think we confused the system because we actually ran the balises and then the game set us back as a reaction to our spadding. Without that, I don't think that the game would have thrown us into a post-trip situation after the signal has changed to green. Obviously, this is not a situation that can happen in real life. Because in real life, if you run the red signal, then you have run the red signal and don't get put back in front of the signal and get subtracted 1,000 points and they tell you to try anew. But this might have confused the system here. But it's interesting to see that they have some programming for the post-trip that actually should not happen according to the game, because every time you run a red signal, you get set back. And I've never tried if you can actually go into staff responsible on your own account. So we are in 1. Actually, we should get new information here. Yeah, at least this worked as expected. We got the new information automatically at the new balises without having to restart the system. But let's just, since we are out to break the game, let's see if we can switch the level. No, we cannot switch the level on our own volition. See, the 5 is grayed out. Cannot ask the level. Okay, how would we do that to switch into staff responsible on our own volition? There's no point to do this anyway. Except for the end of authority mode, I don't see how we could switch into staff responsible. Without changing the level. Obviously we could try to switch to level 0 if we were able to access level changes. Yeah, I actually only wanted to demonstrate how the system picks up the information to switch into on-site in level 1 just by passing the balises. Not at this signal, because this signal turned to green before we passed it, so I thought we'd just get our new movement authority at this point. But instead what happened was what I expected to happen when trying to pass the red signal. But I guess this was because we were set back to a point in time before we passed the signal, and the signaling system was not set back the same way, or was also set back the same way. At any rate, not to the proper state. Skashnik 18. So let's see if there's anything happening before we get Idzikowice. Yeah, we won't have to stop there. Ah yeah, there we will get out of level 1 again. This will be the part where it is easy to miss the 120 limit. That is just after the end of ETCS. It's 16 minutes to... Oh no, I'm 1 minute delay. Well, we get to the end of the ETCS part, and then I think I will call it a night. CD Radar says, we all living in America. Are we? I actually have to do some American content again. Or did you buy the new version of the Long Island Railroad? Here is a Vizcashnik 6A. No. Our routing planner. We are not lucky, says CD Radar. Why are we not lucky? I actually tried to find a service that I can run with the Dragon locomotive for the second ETCS stream, but it's actually... I actually did not find a service for the Dragon where you can have a decent part of ETCS track. Luckily. We are not luckily. We are not luckily, he says. Ah, I see. We are not in America. Well, I think I wouldn't mind. But I'm at work and taking fans out of the Rammstein concert. I see. So you are talking to us from your subway train. And the Rammstein, you're on your break. I am sure you would never use a telephone or anything while driving your train. I trust. Must be an interesting crowd in terms of clothing. People coming from the Rammstein concert in Prague. An illustrious bunch. Is it already done, the concert? It's not that yet. It's not that late yet. Just ended. Alright. Two hours, 8 to 10. So my stream today is again longer than the Rammstein concert. Yes. CD Radar says our train can take up to 1,000 people. Your subway train can take 1,000 people. Alright. But they must be wedged in like sardines then. $200 per carriage times 5, alright. And they are wedged in like sardines. Well, they might have been wedged into the concert area like sardines anyway. Metro to the airport would be nice, says Spectre. Does Prague Metro not go to the airport in Prague? You have to take the bus, or that is inconvenient. And of course, ice hockey World Championship is taking place now in Prague. Oh yeah, that is something. So lots of people are in town. I can see that. So, Vyskashnik 18. Where are we approaching? Javki. And then the next is Idzikowice. And then the ETCS part ends here. We're always seeing those white signs for the beginning of level 1. So the sign obviously can be repeated. Actually, they replace airport buses with 24-minute trolley buses recently. Well, maybe. I have no idea where the airport in Prague is, to be honest. Ah, 24 meters, not minutes. So I thought it takes 24 minutes to go from city center to the airport then, with those buses. Yes, double articulated. So those buses have 2 joints. Doesn't sound that long, 24 meters, but well, okay. How long is a normal articulated bus then? Ravens Lofty says SimRail multiplayer is fun. I can ask dispatchers to give me a red signal to practice what I learned from the presentation. Ah, yeah, that is good. I did not think of that. But that is obviously a thing. 18 meters are normal articulated buses. I see. Well, Ravens Lofty, then let me know if what I told in the presentations is actually valid or not. You can give people any signal. Yeah, this is the free roaming then. Just take a server with no one on it and we can actually go through different scenarios. I was using the braking indicator as a guide for my braking curve, she said. Alright. And did you get any closer to finding out whether they are using lambda curves or not? I should ask on Discord and see. That's true. CD Raider says, thank you for dog photo. My heart melted. Oh, that's nice of you. Yeah, they are a great pair, the two of them. So we're approaching another braking curve. How can they make routes that are hundreds of kilometers long in that much detail, says Spectre? Well, they must have some sort of an automated system to do this from the geodata that they get, right? Otherwise it can't be possible. And how they get the scenery on it, I wouldn't know. All trees are the same, that might be one thing. So, braking curve for the 160. Level change back to SHP. Too slow for the braking curve. Alarm, 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 alarm. But we made it without an automatic brake application. But now this is weird, right? The yellow thing was on all the time, even though we were way below the 160. And now, don't miss this one here. Reduction to 120 is announced. Now you're back to your own devices. And don't miss the reduction to 120 here. That starts here at this blue building complex. And we're running into Idzikowice. This is the dispatching tower where Raven's Lofty is sitting sometimes and getting people into Idzikowice. Yeah. She agrees. Yes, Spectre. What are the chances they merge with DTG? I would not know if there are any chances. From what you hear, they are a quite small group of developers at SimRail. And here is the 160 sign. And now there comes the long stretch of unguided 160 through the Polish landscape. Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr would go from Cologne to Hanover. Yes. I actually looked at it on a map. This is a track that is as long as maybe London to Liverpool, or from Munich to Frankfurt, or even Cologne. This is an impressively long track, and it is even interconnected with the other route, the freight route. So route merges are not really a thing because they are all in one route. That is kind of impressive. But yeah, guys, I think I will conclude the stream here, because this will take a while until we get to the next part of ETCS controlled territory. I might drive the train home after I have taken out the dogs in some kind of a B-reel stream, so if you want you can tune in again. But for concluding the video about today's ETCS cap signaling part 2, I think this is it. And next week, following up on Super Paul's idea, I will be back on Train Sim World, and we will be talking about couplers and what they do for us and why we need them, what kinds there are, and so on. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Spectre, Ravenslofty, CD Raider, Super Paul, if you're still here, and Mabot, obviously, if you're still here. I will come back to streaming SimRail at any rate, but not next week, probably, so that we don't lose Train Sim World completely out of the focus. And speaking of focus, so that I can actually focus on the driving without the HUD, what is not so difficult on the Pendolino if you don't actually have to stop a lot, I will call it a night for this video. Take care of the dogs and then return in a couple of minutes, like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And if you like, feel free to tune in again, and let's see what else can happen here on this drive from Warsaw to Katowice. Thanks again, and see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye bye.